Tahiatu and welcome to the Link Up. Today I have my best friend here.
Woo!
Miss Ennaolla Paea, and we're actually just going to chill, and pretty much this is all about the bestie chats. And today's topic, we're talking about life hacks. So I am going to let Nolz tell us a bit about herself. So over to you.
Yay! By the way, this is really cool. I was thinking when you named it Bestie Chats, I was like, so how filtered or unfiltered are we, you know? Because, I don't know if you want to hear the unfiltered versions. Yeah, it's really cool to be here. My background, firstly, I am Niue Canadian. So I'm from Hakupu, Niue, which I'm actually traveling to in the next few weeks. So I can't wait to go back. And dig some family history out and learn some more stories from my family there.
Mm-hmm.
And then my mum is Canadian, but our background is Czech and Polish and gosh, a whole bunch of different
just
different
very
history there.
European.
Yeah, very yeah.
Ugh, I tripped on that. European. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so crazy mix. But born in Aotearoa, raised in the beautiful hood of Otara, South Auckland, and so loud and proud about that. And yeah, my background has been creative arts directing, specifically in street dance for the last 15, almost 20 years. Woo!
Yeah.
I still rock the young life in my dreams. And
You do it so well.
I hope so. And youth and community work. So I think I've been raised in those environments and I love those environments. And the list could go on about the different, programs, initiatives, things that were pioneered in the spaces I've been a part of.
Yeah.
But if there's dance, young people, creatives, and community, that's all I'll probably ever do.
Yeah.
Until I cannot physically do it anymore.
Okay, wow, that was a lot to take in. And it's not as if I don't know a lot of this stuff. It's just, it's so cool just hearing it all over again. And, as besties, we've definitely been ride and die for each other, but also we've gone through the good, the bad, the highs, the lows, the hills, the valleys, you name it. And we have the stories of doom to go with that.
Yep.
Probably some not good for public consumption. But I guess in terms of our relationship and just everything we've walked out together, it's been such a blessing and a joy to have you in my life. You're definitely a pillar for me. And you also are one of the few people who's able to check me and keep me grounded and humble, which I really love.
By accident.
I really love because you do actually need those people who can actually bring you back down to earth if you're getting so air balloonish that you're trying to float away.
Same.
Yeah.
Ditto.
Yeah. So we're talking about life hacks today, and we had we're just gonna get into whatever topics that come up and we're just gonna talk about them. So what life hack do you first want to touch on?
Great question. I was thinking off the top of my head all the common things that come up in conversations with all the people that I've mentored or worked with or led, and there's a lot of common things that come up, and one of them, which I want to bring to the table, is the myth of balance.
Right. I love that.
Because you hear people all the time, and we've probably said it ourselves, like, I just need to find balance.
Yes.
Or I'm so busy, everything's so crazy, but I just need to find some balance.
Yeah.
And I really believe that's this myth to be popped.
Yeah.
Because that could also become a trap.
Right.
And especially in our spaces, you're just always busy. Like it's busy. It's tired and busy.
Yeah.
And then especially the older you get, it's just tired and busy.
Yeah.
But the question is why? Because we're in control of how we commit our energy, where we commit our energy, with who. And so we're in control of that. And the myth about balance, and this is all my personal experiences and what I believe is, balance is not always a good goal to achieve.
Right.
Because sometimes, and I know there'll be people who can reflect and relate, and even ourselves, we overcommit and we start to take on the next commitment for whatever reason. Great opportunities, take it all. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Like, people please. Oops, cool. Like, I want to honor those people. You know, we start building all these commitments, and then we try fight for balance. But what we're really doing is we're watering down quality, effectiveness, and we end up in this average zone.
Right.
We accidentally try to spread ourselves across many things, but then we're watering down other aspects of ourselves to balance, to help carry all the different loads. And by the end of it, we're just averaging out.
Right. So it's like being a jack of all trades but master of none.
Yeah. And that, you know, for some people, they might actually like that, and that might be a part of what they feel is right for them.
Right.
But a majority of people, they try, you know, hit balance, and instead they hit burnout.
Right.
Because they're just trying to juggle everything. And so it's driven by this idea of, I just need to get balance.
Yeah.
And I think that's like a myth.
Yes.
I think it's sometimes unachievable, or if you get balance, there's going to be a loss somewhere else.
Yeah. I remember a couple of years ago, maybe we were unpacking it in one of our one-on-one bestie chats where not everyone could see it. But I remember talking to you about this balance, and how I'd really come away from balance and had begun to view my world as more what brings harmony and what's more harmonious. Like, I won't put equal amounts of energy to certain things, but there are certain things that I need in my life to bring joy, and that I need in my life to make sure I'm willing to wake up the next day and go. And so it became more so, if you look at it in a circle almost, like it might be a slither of that circle, but that little slither could bring me the most joy. And it was about making sure that my world looked more harmonious, and that there was harmony in everything I did, as opposed to trying to balance it all out.
Yeah.
So I remember when we were discussing this, and I remember thinking, balance is a real myth, because you hear it all the time, and it's like, oh, I just need to find the balance, or, oh, I'm so overcommitted, or I've got all this stuff, I just have to pull it back and get that balance. And I'm like, what is balance? Like, what is it actually?
Yes.
And so for me, it didn't make sense to use that language anymore, because I found it really didn't apply. Because a lot of the time, my energy levels are put to different things, and they're not all the same.
Yeah.
Like, everything I do is treated uniquely for whatever I'm doing. So for me to say, oh, let's balance it out. Like, if you even think of balance as like levels, to balance is to make them kind of all even, and or to make sure it's like just on the same level.
Yeah.
Whereas for me with harmony, it's about creating something that flows and will continue to function well. So that's,
Even that word harmony is such a great analogy as well, because it should flow.
Yes.
Rather than being forced.
Yes.
It has level or layers. And, you know, harmony is many layers, and all have different purposes with different weight.
Exactly.
And even if you think from music, you hear certain things that are amplified more,
yes,
or pull back, and different instruments take over. And so there's that, which the analogy of harmony is way beautiful. However, it requires a lot of self-awareness.
Yes.
Which then means that not everyone would understand that word until they reach this place of way more self-awareness. Because even just to pursue these ideas, you have to be really self-aware.
Yes.
And that's a gap that can help us get trapped in the idea of balance, you know, because you're not maybe growing that self-awareness in your life.
So I guess if we're popping this myth bubble of balance, what then practically would that look like?
I love that you brought to the table the word harmony.
Yeah.
I could bring something else, because I reckon some people will actually embrace that word harmony and start to discover, okay, what does that look like in my life?
Right.
What feels harmonious in my life?
Yes.
What doesn't? And then question why. Does that have to be removed, or does that have to have a lesser influence in my life?
Right.
So even applying the self-reflection of harmony is one thing that could be totally done, especially if that resonates with you.
Yeah.
Another thing is seasonal. So the word seasonal could be another aspect. And so that could mean you go back to the main things that you wanted to focus on this year. And you're aware of the Anchors mentoring space that I facilitate and you're a part of.
Yeah.
And in that space, we talk about creating anchors. And there's multiple things, but one of them is focuses, and the things that you want to exit this year with, that you know you poured your energy and effort into, that you're called to,
right?
That you really know you're meant to focus on. And so going to those core things for you might have goals or focuses or whatever those core things might be, and looking at how those become top priority, and removing and changing the level of priority of those things. And then some of those things might be seasonal. So for example, last year I took a dramatic approach, and I got to around September and I realized that I wasn't progressing in all the things I meant to. I was mediocre in everything.
Okay.
And I was getting burnt out because I was just trying to spread myself across everything. I was trying to be like 5% here, 10% in everything. And
although in all fairness, your mediocre isn't really mediocre, but we can talk about that later.
Yeah, that's the overworking problem. That's the another problem. And I got to this point realizing, I'm not even achieving the things that I really felt in my heart I was meant to.
Right.
So I dramatically made sacrifices. And what I did is I elevated the things I was meant to do. I poured focus, energy, time, intentional, effort into this season. For the next 3 months, I went hundies. Right. I had to make sacrifices elsewhere, though. I had to decide, am I going to have a social life? Yeah. Am I going to be able to do these other things I'm trying to do everything with? Right. And I had to make a sacrifice in order to have high effective progress in those top things. And then it only lasted about 3 months.
Right.
Then I could shift. I'm like, cool, I made massive progress in those 3 months. Then I could take a break. Then I could be a bit more social. For you, it might be like, you're going to have to eat some noodles for some time and have less social life to pursue that dream. Right. And then that window will end if you choose and plan it. And then you can go reset. Yes. And then you move. And so instead of it being like this balance, you're having these levels changing all the time. It's like if you've seen a music soundboard, like at a sound desk or a sound system, they have all these levels. Yes. And it can't always be the same. Like our mic levels will have different volume levels, always changing. And so in our life seasons, your seasons is changing. So then you change the level of focus, you change the level of effort. And again, it requires self-awareness, but the main thing it requires is taking ownership of those focuses that you're meant to be pouring your energy into. Right. Not all these tiny commitments that you probably shouldn't have taken on. Not all these people-pleasing commitments
Right.
that you feel obligated to take on. It's actually like, well, of course you're burning out
Yeah.
because it doesn't even bring life to you.
Right.
But there's these top 3 things
Yes.
that you know you can amplify. And so that's my long way of saying, going back to those focuses
Yeah.
and then choosing how you want to elevate them in your life, for what period. I remember my brother, who has heaps of background as engineer and business, and one of the advices he told me was, I had this creative arts customizing jackets for fun that accidentally blew up. I had way too many orders.
Oh my gosh, they're amazing. Like, because you're still kind of doing them, but they're amazing.
And it was through a lockdown.
Right.
I just wanted to do it. All of a sudden had all these custom orders for these anime jackets that I didn't expect to blow up. And my brother said, you could just do a short time and then leave it. You don't have to pursue this like, oh my gosh, like I have to just go in that
I have
direction.
to make it a thing because it's blown up.
Yeah, and then we pressure ourselves thinking like, maybe this is a success measure. And he said, you could just do it for 10 months or 2 months and then that's it. So I did that and it took this pressure off.
Right.
But that's the understanding of knowing what you're meant to do versus what looks cool.
Right.
Understanding the difference between the opportunities that present to you, but not all of them are meant to be taken.
Yes.
The ones that align to your call, those might be the ones to really consider, as opposed to taking every opportunity, burning out because you're trying to balance everything but you can't.
Right.
So having intentional seasons is such a key.
And it's so important, especially when it comes to this whole thing, if we're breaking this myth of balance.
Yeah.
Having seasonal times and having seasons where you can focus on things that make you come alive or things that you're passionate about, but you also know it is just a season. It means you get to invest quality. It means you get to invest the right amounts of energy, and it also gives you an end date, which means you don't have to be stuck if you feel yourself like not being as passionate as you were about it. And the type of world we live in now, you actually can make those choices, and we aren't restricted to what was done, because with technology there is so much newness. And there's been huge benefit, even if there is also a very negative side to technology as well. But in terms of what we're talking about right now, like just being able to say, okay, if I focus for 3 months, I'm going to be able to see this happen, and then I can just leave it if I want to.
Exactly.
Or you could build on it.
Yes.
So the opportunities and even the forward moving, it's all encompassed in being able to be seasonal or figuring out harmony within your life.
Yeah.
But a lot of it does come down to self-awareness and doing the work to actually understand what serves you and what doesn't anymore.
Yeah.
Something that may have worked for you for a long time actually may not work for you anymore with the new season you're entering.
So true. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And again, it's just, a question even for those who are listening, like, how do you gauge how self-aware you are and how do you grow your self-awareness? One of the things that we learn from each other is the way we talk, we're basically counseling each other. And those conversations help with blind spots.
Absolutely.
And that can even be another life hack, is having people who are safe and trusted, but also are not just people who take your side.
Absolutely.
They bring another perspective of wisdom to your life, and they will help you see blind spots. because you can't see blind spots without actually making an effort to try figure out what are the blind spots in your own self-awareness.
That's why they're called blind spots.
Yeah. It's, I know we catch each other's blind spots so often. Sometimes without knowing, we're just sharing perspectives, and then it's like,
okay. Thank you for that dagger to my heart that I needed.
Yeah. And that's the question of, okay, how can we grow greater levels of self-awareness? Who is around us that we're humbly letting into our world to speak perspectives and wisdom that will maybe hurt our pride, but help our life and becoming so much more self-aware.
Yeah, and I think even in that vein of what you're talking about, in terms of these people who you're trusting, you have to be willing to be vulnerable. You have to be willing to be authentic, and you have to be willing to allow a level of influence from these people. That's why they need to be safe.
Yeah.
Because you're trusting these people to check you, to catch you, and like you said, to see your blind spots. And if you're just trusting every Tom, Dick, and Harry, it is not going to work.
Nah,
because
totally.
then you head more into the direction of people pleasing. So it means anyone's opinion can influence you. And the thing is, people who don't matter shouldn't be able to affect you, because they can have their opinions. People are welcome to have their own opinions.
Totally.
Absolutely. Like, you have that autonomy. You are allowed to think the way you want to think. There's no problem in that. But if people who you don't know can affect who you are at your core, you've got a problem.
Yeah.
Because that space of influence should only be trusted with a few.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think also because we're both women of faith, we're people who really base ourselves in the Bible. That's also been a huge foundation for us in catching each other and even journeying alongside each other. I mean, it's been almost 20 years now of being besties. I mean, we were these young teenagers who like had dreams of taking over the world, and in some aspects we did. But then we were also humbled as we grow, because life isn't it goes everywhere.
Yeah.
And the older you get, the more you realize how much you really do not know.
Hard out. I feel like I'm still such a student in so many seasons. I just feel like every new season I become a student again.
But I love that as well. I think that's a really good space to live your life in, is being a perpetual student. Now, it doesn't have to be an academic student. You could be a student of life. like
Totally.
And we're all on this journey of life, so it would make sense that you're continually learning.
Yeah.
I
think even a question to put out there, just a question to reflect on, is who are you surrounding yourself with, who you can be a student of? You know, you might use the word mentor, but not all people have to be mentors.
Right.
They're just people in your spaces that really challenge your perspective just because they're living it. You know, they're 10, 20, 30 years older. They've been there, done that, and they're living it. Are you allowing those type of people to be in your proximity?
Yeah.
And that can also increase not just growth, not just being humbled to be a student, but also growing, you know, that level of self-awareness as well, like bringing it back to self-awareness. And I don't know if people put enough effort into surrounding themselves with, I'm talking about older generation wisdom, because, yeah, we're still rookies at life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think we can get stuck in just sticking with our friends.
Right.
And some of our friends are amazing emotional support, but maybe not wisdom.
Yeah.
Some of our friends have great wisdom. However, they're still in the generation of you, so they're still working out things as well. But when you have generations who have been through crazy things as well, they just bring another perspective that increases that self-awareness for your life. But the question is, are you going to put an effort to actually change your circles to allow these people in your life?
Yeah, and I think another aspect to self-awareness and even your question is it's also about checking your ego.
Oh.
Because the thing is,
brain it in.
When you have done so much, and between the both of us, we've done a lot.
Yeah.
We really have.
Crazy stuff. Yeah.
Crazy cool stuff. You can get into the space of, I've already done stuff. Who are you to tell me what to do? Like, yeah, okay, cool. You've got some credentials in some areas, or you've done some stuff in some areas, but I was 19 when I started stuff. Like, what were you doing at 19? You know, so you can get into these spaces where you trap yourself.
Yeah.
Because you're like, you're not willing to listen because you're like, well, what were you doing then?
Yeah.
You know? And the thing is, if you're not willing to be humble and have people speak life and wisdom over you, your ego is going to get in the way of you actually reaching the fullest potential.
That is so true.
Of what you could achieve.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one area that I've had to constantly be aware of in my life. Because especially in my 20s, because I'm still 20 in my 20s, I found myself internally prideful.
Yes.
So externally, I was putting an effort to ensure that I try stay humble. But then, you know, people would all be like, you're so humble. But I'm like, nah, you don't know how prideful I would think or feel. And I had to constantly keep that in check. I had to constantly be like asking God to give me direction on how to like rein that part of my perspective in. And then it slowly became less of an influence in my life, but ego is always flying around. And then if you enter into leadership positions, that's a whole different ball game.
It really is.
Yeah, because I'm and it could be an ego or it could also be wisdom. There's fine line in between. But I personally, I would listen to people who have walked the same valleys and mountains as a leader, because I'm like, okay, you know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I can conversate with you for these leadership experiences.
Yeah.
But when people who haven't walked that, I'm like,
yeah.
I'm
like, I love your knowledge and your theory of how something will happen.
Yeah.
But in terms of a lived reality and a lived perspective, I'm probably going to go with the lived reality and perspective more.
Totally.
Because they've been in the trenches.
Yeah.
And when someone tells you a lot theoretically, you're like, that's cool, but how do you empathize or how do you even sympathize with what I'm feeling if you've never been through it?
Yeah.
So.
And then that's the part of like where ego and wisdom can like, oh, where's the fine line between that? But you're right. You're right in terms of saying how ego can really block us from growth, can block us from, it becomes this huge wall.
Absolutely.
There's like no chance for humility, learning, and self-awareness to be when there's an ego, you know, right in front of you.
I'm just laughing because we've had these kind of chats a lot, and when we dissect them, we end up like just like throwing out these daggers to each other unknowingly, and it's like, oh, I needed to, damn. It's like, okay, I need to check myself again, and I'm like, sorry, God, I was really prideful, and I need to check myself, and I probably need to go and apologize to so-and-so, or I need to treat so-and-so better, and I'm just like, okay, God, cool. Thank you for my best friend.
All the time, yep. It's true.
Okay, cool. That was a lot of info around the myth of balance. So
And like 5 other things.
I know, and 5 other things within that, which is how we operate.
Yeah.
But let's hit another topic.
Okay. Have you ever met that friend? You probably have heaps of them. Those listening, you're probably going to think of names. Have you met that friend who they are very quick to give advice to your situations, but they don't take their own advice?
Ouch.
And then they complain about their situation that directly could have been fixed with their own advice?
Yes. I think we know
Who's
a lot
been
of
that
them.
friend? I think, we may have experienced it, and you easily catch it in others, but we need to put the mirror up and actually check with ourselves. I find it really fascinating, especially like I just think of all of our friends and girls who are so quick to give like relationship advice and boundaries, and you need to sort out this, and man, girl, you
watch out for the red flags.
Yeah. And then it's like, okay, but put up a mirror.
Yeah.
And then silence, and then defense, and then put up the walls, because maybe it's too uncomfortable to admit that you need that same advice.
That same advice that you already know that you give to everyone else except for yourself.
Yeah, and that's such an interesting, I don't know if the words, I don't think it's blind spot. It's almost like this disillusionment or something where you don't realize to the extent how you're actually self-sabotaging your own growth, because you're not honestly confronting the fact that you're complaining more than applying. And so I think there's access to great wisdom and advice everywhere. Yeah. Nowadays, the application part is a problem, and the courage to confront that you have things to deal with, that's a problem as well. And so this idea of around taking your own advice rather than complaining about it, that's the life hack thing we're chucking on the table, and it's a ouch and ugly one, but it really it's a stinger.
It is.
That is very common.
It is. It's so common.
Yeah.
And see, I actually have an anecdote about this one with us. I remember that I was complaining, probably is the best way to explain it. I was complaining to you about a certain person for ages. And in my head, it was just like, I'm just telling my bestie and I'm just letting them know how my days have been going and, dealing with this person. And I kept talking about the same thing over and over again. And after you'd already listened, you'd already allowed me to vent, you went silent on me. And not in a sense that we stopped talking. It's just whenever this topic or this person came up, you just change the subject or you just pause. And I didn't notice it for a couple of months. But when I did start to notice it, which is how I tend to get my hits from you when you go silent, I started to realize there's something in the unsaid, in what you weren't saying. And so I had to actually reflect and realize, I'm not venting anymore. I stopped venting a long time ago and I'm just complaining. And now that I'm complaining, I need to do something about it, because she's already told me everything. Like, she's been there, she's been empathetic, sympathetic, she's listened, she's even given some really, some godly wisdom and advice. And I'm blocking myself from learning because I'm going around and round in circles with this situation and I'm not doing anything to actually change it. Yeah. And so it was so funny because it was your silence that made me turn inward, and I became more introspective to try and figure out why had you gone silent on me. But we were still we're besties, so we talk all the time. But the silence in this topic spoke volumes because I was just like, okay, she's not talking to me about this anymore. Why is she not talking to me? Or why is she not acknowledging it anymore? Because I'd still talk about it.
Yeah.
But you'd either just like let me say something, and then once I was done, you just continue on with a different topic.
Yeah.
But it just made me so like aware once I clued on. And once I clued on, I was like, oh, I'm being the problem now because I'm allowing this to continue and I'm not changing anything in this situation except for continually complaining. And that has that awakening or that awareness that was brought from me seeing what you had done in terms of not talking about it, because you were no longer giving energy to it anymore. So you're like, I mean, I don't know if that was what you meant to do, but it was very much like, I'm not even going to focus on this. I'm not going to entertain it. You can talk about it, but I'm not going to say anything. And you would just talk about something else. And once I recognized it, because sometimes I'm the bestie in the situation that will talk for ages. And sometimes Nolz doesn't get a word in. And so in this situation, when I realized it wasn't, something wasn't giving, like, and I was like, oh. And it wasn't ever like, oh my gosh, she's not even talking to me anymore. How rude. Our relationship has never been like that. So for me, when you changed and when I realized it, it was immediately, okay, something's got to give and it's probably on my side. And that awareness allowed me to change my situation, to get out of it, to release forgiveness to this person and be able to move forward in life. But it had had me trapped and stuck for so long. And if you don't have good people around you who can check you from a place of love, because you don't want people who check you with their own agendas. You want someone who wants the best for you, who wants God's best for you. So I can wholeheartedly say that in this situation, you've always been there and done that for me. So it's very interesting that we're talking about putting this mirror up, because it's like, okay, if I've got to check myself, what do I need to learn in this to actually grow?
And I think the fact that you were so intentional about asking the questions, you could have been reactive. You could have chosen like, oh, she doesn't get me. Stuff you, man. Like, you're supposed to be on my side. You know, like, you actually could have justified that reaction, but instead you chose self-awareness. You chose the humble, harder road to process what is happening here. Why has this situation caused me to go in circles? Which we have that, especially relational ones. We do have crazy conflict that is so emotionally burdening that we do find ourselves in circles. And some of it requires external people to help us out of that circle. And then some just require yourself to actually have the hard, confronting reflections with yourself and making change. And so it's so cool that you brought up an example of how you reflected, because that's a huge part, because many people will do the fight or flight response. They'll, you know, fight the people who actually have their back and then just break that off and, you know, push them away, or run from everything and never confront their part. And so they're just trapped in this cycle of
oh my gosh, do we know people like
that? And my heart breaks, because I'm like, man, we've talked, you vented, now it's like going on, you know, years now, and nothing's changing. I can no longer help you. I can just be beside you. But now it's like, even I can see that you're in this, you know. We all have, you know, those experiences with others, but maybe we don't realize we're trapped in that ourselves.
And I think it's hard, because even with people who we know who are like that, they then start to feel abandoned because we have nothing more to give. And it's like, I don't know how else to help you. Like, you might need professional help, like, or you do need professional help. And it gets into this circle where, because in different aspects, we're both rescuers.
Yeah.
And we do, unfortunately, have those tendencies. So we have to be aware of those things as well. And when we see people who we really love and who we really care about be in these situations and in these circles, or even when it's ourselves going through stuff, when it gets to that point where you can no longer help, it can really hurt when the people who you have like been there for, who you have loved on and cared for, turn around and feel betrayed at you no longer having anything more to give.
Yeah.
And then within that, it's like, bro, didn't you see me be there through all the dark nights, through all the dark days? Didn't you see me hold your hand when you needed to be picked up? Like,
yeah.
And I'm talking metaphorically, like picked up. But I mean, it can get really, even that can drain your energy when you have people like that who cannot see.
Yeah.
And you've given them all the tools in your own experiences and like your lived knowledge, but if they're not willing to take those on board and use them for themselves, you end up being seen as the bad guy, like you left me. And I'm like, and I hate it because I'm like, I didn't leave you, I just cannot help you get out of this, only you can. Like, it's actually now down to you. And if you want change, you have to be that catalyst for yourself now, because there's nothing more I can do or add that can change this equation up. It
is. And that's why it's such a simple idea of, take your own advice. And then there'll be a point where your advice will no longer be able to help you in your situation or season. So then you do go to those who are experienced and have wisdom to share into your life. But there's a lot that you can actually fix yourself. But it comes down to ownership and that courage. It's really humbling and requires courage to look in the mirror. Because you start to see things that you actually hate, and then you might be ashamed of admitting that those things need to be dealt with. And there's just so much mixed emotions that come up with the confronting choice. However, the reward, the healing, the healed relationships that could come from it, the healed aspects in yourself that can come from it is incredible.
Absolutely.
And often missed out on, all because we're trapped in this complaining zone. And a practical thing for yourself, rather than looking at everyone else going, oh, that's my friend and that's my friend, actually checking with yourself, what have I been caught in complaining about? Not just venting, like you said, you stopped venting at some point and then it just became this negative rant. And what has been on my mind and my verbal language, and try catch it and see, especially if it's like, it's one thing to complain about something for a week versus months and years. And if there's things that's just constantly always there, you have an issue with it that you actually have to recognize. And so a practical step is to, again, with self-awareness, reflecting on the patterns in your language, in your thoughts about that situation that keeps coming up, or that person that keeps triggering bad emotions and reactions from you, and start to acknowledge that, okay, you need to do some work in this area. So cutting the cord of complaining, and now being proactive to bring resolve, healing, forgiveness, whatever's required in that area. That's one immediate action that can happen. However, you brought up that whole cool point about rescuing. And just a note on those who know they're rescuers or didn't know you're a rescuer, but hearing what we're talking about and you realize you're quick to want to save people out of their situations. One of the best things that I think we've learned over the years around boundaries, one of the best things is to listen and love and give advice when it's asked for, but actually put the responsibility of change back on your friends.
Yeah.
In simple, they might present a situation and they're like, ranting on about whatever. And if you have no answers that really could bring solutions to them because maybe they're so invested in the problem, bringing questions like, so what are you going to do about it to change this? Have you thought about some solutions? What's the actual problem? And you ask questions that puts the responsibility of change in their court. Some people don't like that, but the truth is we're only going to enable their behavior more if we try rescue and hug it out, and they'll go in this complain, then you make them feel good cycle, and then it comes back up next week.
Yeah.
And it's not going to help them mature. It's not going to help them take responsibility and ownership.
Right.
But when you ask questions that they realize they either can't answer or they don't want to answer, that will either make them retreat and check their language. That might make them, like how you went on this process of reflecting, wait, Nolz is no longer listening with that situation. We talk about everything else, and then you start to reflect.
Right.
That might humble them. That might even make them decide they want just yes people. So they'll change social groups. That's hard.
Yeah.
However, you don't want to be stuck being a rescuer.
You really
that is
don't.
Incredibly draining.
It is.
And sometimes we make it worse.
Yes. In all our years of living so far, yes.
Yeah. So we're not actually helping.
No.
And so if you find that you're in that, I would suggest that you start to position yourself differently. You ask questions that help your friends take ownership on what they can control, on the behaviors, reactions, or solutions that they can actually enable, and placing it back on them. And it will help them mature. So you're actually doing a greater thing than just rescuing their hurt. You're helping them grow into stronger people. It doesn't feel like that at the time, but in the long term, it totally is.
Absolutely. And I think also because of the type of people we were growing up, we always wanted to find solutions. We're very solutions-based troubleshooting type of people, whether that was just from the kind of work we did as well. So we naturally want solutions and resolution, and we don't like staying stuck. So we just assume everyone wants to be like that. And not everyone does. They really don't.
That's why a lot of people won't tell me stuff, because they know that I'm so straight up and I'm honest, and I have, values that really keep us in check. And so there's a lot of people who they'll talk about everything else, but they won't talk about certain problems because they know that I'm going to pull up a mirror because you're the one who can actually get yourself out of this. And they don't like that. And sometimes I do it unintentionally.
Yes. A lot.
So
you do it unintentionally a lot. But I think I've always told you as well, you are literally a mirror when people talk to you.
Sorry.
And you don't even mean to do it. That's the thing. But I also know that our relationship is so special because we have these discussions and I don't think we ever really get mad with each other, because it's if something's triggering or if something's come up, it's an open discussion. It's literally, I need to talk about this. This happened and I was affected. And we're both oh, okay. And it's never like, oh, well, you should have done this. That's just not how our relationship is. It really isn't. And so I don't know how to explain that, but there is such a humility within the relationship that there is no ego really in it. And it's what allows us to have these discussions, because we get into some really nitty gritty stuff.
Yeah.
And we strip back so much. But I always come out of them refreshed and uplifted and encouraged that I am learning something new. Whether it's about myself or you, or about how I can deal better with a situation. So yeah, it's definitely been a journey, but one that I love so much, because yeah, you've been that mirror, but it's not a bad thing. Because even when you were that mirror and I didn't want to listen, going back to when I was younger, had I listened, I probably could have saved myself a lot of heartache. But it's okay, because you stood by me regardless. So, hello, I'm here. But yeah, even reflecting back on those days, like, I was one of those people, you know, and there are probably heaps of times where you just had to be like, here's the mirror, come out of this. But there was no pressure to change. It was always left in my court. And I think that's really key, especially with rescuer types, is take that emphasis off yourself and put it back where it belongs, and don't carry it, because if you carry it, you will drain yourself and you will get burnt out, and then you're of no use to anyone, including yourself. So yeah, it's interesting just thinking, one, about our history, but even two, about this situation, like this being a thing, because it is like, take your own advice or stop complaining.
It sounds so simple, but it's so difficult.
I mean, it is simple.
It is simple.
It's just hard to do. It's like, you know, the grass is always greener on the other side, you know, that analogy or that quote that's always mentioned, but actually the grass is greener wherever you water it. So you can play the comparison game, you can play that, or you can actually figure out where you're watering and what you're giving power to.
Absolutely. It's so true. That's why I love that analogy. I'm like, there's a reason why your grass is brown. Okay.
There's a reason why your grass looks Australian. Whoa! No judgment. I'm playing. Don't come at me. I'm playing. But I'm just saying, grass in Brisbane looks brown.
Oh, man. I can't.
No jokes. My family live over there. Don't come at me, guys. I'm just playing.
Oh, yeah. I think there's so much things to, there's so many things to take in, but it's choosing what to apply. Yeah. And I always, I'm like one of my repetitive statements in any mentoring group I'm taking is around application is the key to your transformation. And we can get all this amazing knowledge from anywhere. Yeah. There's like too much information out there that is free, accessible now. But it means nothing until you actually apply it to your life. It's like, you know, we get health plans given to us, but getting given the paper with the health plan on it, it's not going to help you.
It doesn't do anything.
Exactly.
Unless you get your butt to the gym.
Yeah.
For 20 minutes a day. Unless you choose to eat your veggies and your greens and your meat and have a balanced diet as opposed to takeaways every night.
Yeah. And
like, it's a choice.
And the difference between the knowledge and then actually applying that knowledge and application is a choice, and it's a powerful choice, and it's not an easy one to implement, but
absolutely
choosing what you're going to apply will directly result in transformation. And so there's so much things that, you know, even we've talked about today, but even if you just took one of them and started to apply it over the next few months, crazy transformation.
Absolutely. And I mean, even the analogies I use, like going to the gym or eating well, like those are really simple, but human beings are complex.
Yeah.
And as someone who struggles with food and having chronic illness and pain levels that can really be debilitating in me being able to do stuff, it can be really hard to get these simple things off the ground. It can be as much as I might have been in the studio filming all day and I have absolutely no energy to do anything else. So I can't cook, I can't go to the gym. Literally the easiest option is takeaways. And if you're working 40 to 60 hour weeks, trying to provide for your family, trying to do, these things are not easy.
Yeah.
And if you're living in survival mode, these things are not easy. So I'm not trying to be like, I'm not trying to oversimplify. Like, it's a matter of you just applying. It's not that at all, because it's a lot more complex than that.
Yeah.
But there is an element of, if you have excuses in the way and you feel they're excuses as opposed to things that actually are like obstacles that are hard to overcome, then get rid of the excuses.
Yeah.
But if you have obstacles to overcome, that's where you take it step by step, day by day, and you work on it. It's not an overnight fix, and it's not an easy solution. A lot of the times, things to do that are for your betterment are simple. Enacting them, that is a different story.
It's true.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Damn, this has been intense in a good way. I mean, it's very typical for us.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
This is perhaps the first time we've ever shared our kind of talks on a public forum. Yeah, that was intense, and I loved it. And do we have any final thoughts? Because I'm not sure I do.
I think if you've listened to portions of this, choose one thing and apply it.
Yeah.
Or go down the rabbit hole of reflection on something that triggered you or resonated, because we actually need to be looking at ourselves, being like, oh, how can I grow or heal, or being aware. And I think all of the things we talked about, whether they're life hacks or crazy awareness hacks, to be honest, what really matters is applying that and going deeper for ourselves. So yeah, that's my final thoughts. I've loved this.
It's been the best.
Yep.
I don't really have final thoughts, except thank you so much for coming on. I love that for as long as I do the link up, there will always be bestie chats every season. And, you know, it's been an absolute honor and privilege and so much joy to have this kind of chat with you. Thank you for coming on my podcast. And I know perhaps you're not in front of the camera with me all the time because you're so busy. But you've always been in the background. Nolz also helped design my graphics, which is awesome, amongst all her other hats that she wears. But yeah, I'm just so thankful that you've come to chat with me and end off our first season of the Link Up. So
Thank you. I loved it.
Yeah, it's been great. If you guys have any other questions or topics you want us to discuss, just email us at info@thelinkup.co.nz. You can also message us via DMs on TikTok and Instagram. And if you want to check out any of Nolz's stuff, she's on IG under e.pioneer, or Watch Like Flair, which is her creative side of things, and you can go see all her amazing jackets she's designed, some of her other things she's done. She is so crazy talented. I wear a lot of her earrings on the show as well. She is a multifaceted, multi-talented woman. So yeah, that's it for season 1. I hope you guys enjoyed the journey with us. We will be back after a short holiday break with season 2. So yeah, aloha.